One day, a man named Wayne Martin decided to purchase a shipping container for himself on the internet. Believe it or not, but these days you can find large shipping containers on the internet in great condition for a really low price. Inspired by the amount of good quality, cheap shipping containers online, Wayne decided to get his hands on one and build something that he had always wanted to have. After finding a good container at a reasonable price, Wayne started the long process. Even though Wayne had managed to find a container in relatively good condition, he realized he still had a lot of preparation work to do before it would really be ready. The first thing Wayne started to do was inspect the container for any serious mechanical issues or structural problems. Once the container checked out for safety, Wayne went on with the next step, sealing the container so that it wouldn't leak or rust. He needed it to be in top shape for his plan. Once the preparation work had been completed on the container, Wayne set about completing the next task, digging the hole. This was actually one of the more difficult parts of the process as the dimensions of the hole had to be just right. Otherwise, the container wouldn't fit or wouldn't have enough room once it was in the hole. Wayne made sure that the hole gave at least 2 feet extra space on the corners of the container and a few extra feet for the entrance. After having dug the hole to the precise specifications, Wayne set about lining the hole with pea gravel. Pea gravel is a type of weathered gravel that occurs when rocks are ground down by water in river beds. This gravel is ideally used for paving or in general construction because it allows for good drainage while acting as a sturdy base to rest objects on or to lay concrete over. After lining and flattening the bottom of the hole, the next phase could continue. Now that the hole had been correctly lined with pea gravel, Wayne was ready for the next, and possibly the most important, part of the project, lowering in the container. Wayne spent a little while figuring out what the best method would have been to achieve the best results. He decided to call in a septic tank specialist to bring his large truck-based crane over, with the idea being to use the large crane to help lift and lower the container into the hole. There were a few tense moments as the crane slowly lifted the large container up and then slowly lowered the container back down into the hole. Wayne was worried that there might be an issue with the fit of the container in the hole. Even though he knew he followed his guidelines perfectly, he was still pretty nervous about the idea of having got something wrong. However, after a few minutes, the container was in the hole and was fitting perfectly. Wayne was relieved. Wayne had measured out the specifications for the hole perfectly. Things were starting to take shape, but Wayne still had to ensure that a lot of things were checked off his list before he would be finished. The next issue was laying a sump pump. This essentially helps to pump water out from under the container and ensures that it remains above the water level. Wayne had left room for the pump, and now simply had to lay the piping and lower in the pump. The next issue was probably one of the most important factors of laying anything underground, the entrance. Due to the fact that his structure wasn't on the surface of the ground, Wayne would have to pay extra attention to the entrance to ensure that he could reach the structure easily enough, i.e., that it was practical, but also had to ensure that nothing would wind up blocking it. So, to be safe, he opted for a concrete staircase with walls around the entrance. Now that Wayne had laid the entrance to his underground structure, things started to really take shape. It was like the mysterious building had finally started to make sense and Wayne was making great progress. Because the structure was underground, adding a little extra support to the top of the structure was a necessity as it would help to increase the sturdiness of the design. Wayne laid 2 large beams from the start of the staircase to the front door to help increase the structure's strength. The support beams had proved to be a good idea. They gave the structure a lot more strength and allowed Wayne to move on to the next step, constructing the roof. The roof of this structure would essentially be on ground level. This meant that Wayne would have to make an extra strong roof for his structure, otherwise it would collapse under any weight that may be rested upon it after it was finished, something Wayne didn't want to have to think about. It was very important for Wayne to ensure that his roof would be able to hold a lot of weight. In order to achieve this, he spent a little extra time and attention when it came to building the roof. He laid a number of crossbeams that were secured in the ground and then went about laying thick sheets of metal across them to create a roof. His initial tests proved that it could withstand the weight of a few people quite easily, a good start. The staircase was essentially the only way in and out of the bunker. Because of this important fact, Wayne decided to go back and spend a little extra time on it. To finish off the staircase, Wayne decided to lay some rebar around the entrance as a guideline for his work. He then went about laying out concrete cinder blocks in order to construct a low-lying wall around the entrance, making it stronger and more appealing visually. Work on the entrance was nearly finished. Wayne's idea for using concrete cinder blocks, cement and rebar was paying off. When these materials are used in combination with one another, they become strong and sturdy. They're commonly used in construction regularly and are therefore a favorite among builders and developers. Wayne was cementing his entrance and making the underground structure concrete in pretty good time. So far, he had managed to stay on budget and was even working under his initial estimations. This next step was probably the most important in the entire process and one that would render the whole structure largely useless if it wasn't completed correctly. I'm referring to the air supply in the underground structure, and as you realize, being underground doesn't allow for much fresh oxygen, which means that you literally have to pump it in. Wayne cleverly decided to use 2 large pumps instead of only one, ensuring that the container would get enough oxygen all the time. After the air pumps had been set up and were working successfully, Wayne moved on to one of the final steps in the creation of his mysterious underground structure. This was to lay concrete over what was now the roof of the structure to ensure that it didn't suffer from any structural weakness over time. Soil is likely to move over time with the effects of the cold weather. So to prevent this from happening, Wayne would lay concrete down over the top of the structure. Wayne wasn't taking any chances when he decided to pour the concrete. Because he had lived on the property for quite some time, he had a fair understanding of how strong the foundation of his own home had to be made in order to survive the weather and the slope that his property was on. When it came time to lay the concrete, Wayne opted for a very thick layer, roughly 6 inches of concrete, for the surface. Once the concrete had been laid and dried, the structure finally started to look like it had taken shape. But what on earth was Wayne building down there anyway? While reviewing his newly concreted rooftop, Wayne decided that the entrance could use a few more bricks to be on the safe side. Rather than a simple demarcated hole, Wayne decided to raise the level a little bit and create a mock wall for the entrance to keep it better protected from the elements. Once the additional bricks had been laid on the entrance to the buried container, the entrance looked just about finished from the surface. Wayne was pretty proud of his work and decided that the structure was stable enough to stand on its own. Slowly, he decided to remove the support beams from the staircase and watched as the structure successfully held itself up without a hitch. Wayne was that much closer to finishing his strange project. But what on earth was it for anyway? Once the staircase had finally been finished from top to bottom, Wayne took a step back and admired his construction work. He had managed to build his bunker in near record time and had saved himself a great deal of money by doing it himself. He looked like a proud father watching over one of his children as he observed the structure from the ground. But why would someone like Wayne need a bunker of any kind underground on his property? Wayne had been building a cellar because his home didn't have a basement large enough for him to store all the bottles of spirits that he had started collecting over the years. Rather than cramp up his home, he decided to build the add-on and increase his collection space. A lot of people initially thought he was building a Cold War era-style bunker to keep himself safe, but in reality, his goal was a lot more innocent than that. Well, for the most part. Okay, so we lied a little about it being only a cellar. It turns out that while Wayne did originally create the underground bunker with the intention of creating a cellar for him to store fine wines and spirits in, he also wanted to have the bunker double up as 2 extra things. The first was extra storage space for his own personal belongings, and the second was as a safe hiding place in case of a natural disaster or emergency. Wayne had spent a lot of time preparing his underground cellar and was really proud that the construction process had been successful. Wayne was so excited about his work that he decided to publish his plans online and even added a few tips that he learned during the construction process, such as a handrail for the staircase in case you live in an area with lots of rain or ice. His plans are pretty detailed and will definitely be helpful to other DIY bunker builders. After a while of hard work and some careful attention to detail, Wayne had finally completed his amazing DIY project. For someone to have finished this largely by themselves, or with a very small team, in such a short space of time was highly impressive. In total, the bunker had cost him no more than $12,000, which is a great deal cheaper than professional companies charge, usually around $50,000 minimum. Wayne now had a storm shelter and a cellar at a fraction of the price. He was elated.